Welcome to the Audiophiles. It's a video game club where good friends get together to talk about good music. I'm your excited music business friend Knox, joined with one of the most talented, funniest performers, music analyzers that I know, Mr. Noelle Sammour.
How are you doing? In today's episode, we are talking about Skyrim.
The Elder Scrolls V.
You know what? Say the whole thing for respect's sake.
The Elder Scrolls V. Skyrim.
We've been excited to talk about this game since we got started in this club because the score is huge. We're big Jeremy Soule fans.
It's such a deep game with such a deep impact on gaming culture that it's something we're going to keep coming up to. And I think it was actually important for us to study in the beginning of this club because I think that we're going to find a lot of RPGs made in the last 10 years take inspiration from how the Elder Scrolls did things. The context for the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, or as we can unpretentiously refer to it from now on, Skyrim. Skyrim came out in 2011. It's a definitive Bethesda RPG. Bethesda's been around since the mid-90s, I think, or early 90s. Produced by Bethesda Game Studios, published by Bethesda Softworks, where they have both the production side and the publisher under one umbrella, and that all falls under ZeniMax Media, parent company. Anyways. So, of course, the legendary soundtrack to Skyrim was written by Jeremy Soule. Mm-hmm. This is the same composer that composed for Knights of the Old Republic, which we did in the first episode of the club.
Mind if I just Google Jeremy Soule's other works? He composed for Elder Scrolls V, Elder Scrolls 4, The Guild Wars, Total Annihilation. Are these all games?
Yeah.
Okay. He composed for the Harry Potter Chamber of Secrets video game.
What a legend.
That's funny.
He adapted 2 different John Williams scores.
Yeah.
I wonder if Warner Brothers is related to LucasArts at that time.
I don't even know how to Google
because
that.
LucasArts would have been... No. Who made Knights of the Old Republic? BioWare. So someone at BioWare... Oh, but Lucas filmed it with the licensing, so it might have been the same, person at Fox. Because Lucasfilm and Fox are, intertwined. We're getting conspiratorial here. So let's consider the game from the perspective of the game developer. First objective being using music to immerse the player. And they had to do this despite the challenge of having limited creation tools and also had limited ways for the game to interact with the music.
I don't really know much about the implementation of music into games, but you were talking to me earlier about he might have a drum track that starts first and then other tracks would layer in as the game progresses or as you get into later stages of the boss you're facing and things like that. This kind of sophisticated implementation, that's not in this game, right?
That's right, and it goes to one of the things I was talking about, some of the potential struggles that they might have had making this game is you have limited tools of the Bethesda creation kit, the game engine that was made, because of course Bethesda is famous for making their own game engine. They don't use Unreal or Unity or anything like that. They use a custom engine called the Bethesda Creation Kit. Bethesda, thank you so much for releasing the Bethesda Creation Kit for free into the world. It's such a good thing for the development of art and commerce. It made your game last longer because you realize that mods in your community can keep your game alive because all doing art is building a community.
Is Nintendo listening?
Because Bethesda's making their own game engine, they may not necessarily have had the resources at the time in the mid-2000s to make their engine really open up possibilities to interact with the music. A key way to analyze the way that music is used in video games is the responsiveness. I think that's something we're going to be talking about in a lot of games, is to what degree is the actions of the music corresponding to the actions of the player. So in Skyrim, it's actually not very responsive. Because the music changes, yes, when you get attacked, when combat ends, when you are exploring, when it is daytime, when it is nighttime, and your location. I'm sure there are more, but that's generally the ways that the music system picks which track to play.
Not only is the composer given more freedom, but the composer is given more responsibility. And because of this, the composer, instead of writing an A section of a piece and then using the different layers of that A section in different parts of the implementation of the game, the composer has to write the A section again in a new orchestration. For example, if he wants the player to hear a melody again in a different way, he can't just mess with the tracks that he has. He has to recompose that melody for the listener in the way he wants us to hear it.
It gives the composer a lot of authority to set the tone, and tone is so important to an Elder Scrolls RPG.
You and I both agree that tone is the method of immersion.
So how do you then create a consistent tone of music across dozens of hours of composition.
You mess with variation. Sometimes the music is as if the people are hearing it in the world. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes the music is major or minor. Sometimes it's something totally different. There are pieces with strong melodies. There are pieces with weak melodies. There are pieces with both. He has a style. He does not have rules. There's no better place to start than
the beginning. The main theme to Skyrim, officially titled Dragonborn. This is an overture. How?
It does the things an overture is supposed to do for the listener. The main melody of the yum bum bum, yum bum bum, yum bum. It has that 1, 2, 3 rhythmic attitude to it, the rhythmic melodic pattern. That's your first melody, and then it's immediately followed by yubba bum, yubba bum, yubba bum, which is the same rhythmic pattern but faster. And then that is followed by bum, 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 which is the same rhythmic pattern again. 1, 2, 3, huh, but it's way slower. So what the composer is doing is he's not only getting his most bang for his buck from each melodic idea, which releases him from coming up with endless ideas, but he's setting us up, the listener, for when the melody comes back later in the game, which is exactly what an overture is supposed to do, because when he brings it back slow, we've heard it slow. When he brings it back fast, we've heard it fast. If he's anywhere in between, that's our main melody.
We are immersed by kind of our reality bleeding into the reality of the world, where this song that I hear in the trailer of a video game that plays on the Super Bowl commercial is actually a language from a story that I'm about to tell about myself.
The horns that you're hearing are horns that the people might hear. The language you're hearing is the language that the people would speak. Even though it's not music that they're actually hearing in the moment, it's halfway there because it's music they might hear.
One of my favorite anecdotes about the main theme to Skyrim is that it was one of the earliest ideas that Todd Howard had solidified about what the next Elder Scrolls game was going to be. He had the thought, what if for the main theme of Skyrim, it's the Elder Scrolls theme, but sung by an epic barbarian choir?
Talk about going above and beyond for your assignment. Yeah, I'll put it in a dragon language. What dragon language? Give me a weekend.
It's funny you said that because that's the other part of the anecdote. It wasn't Jeremy Soule who wrote the text. It was one of the lead writers of the game who went home over the weekend, famously made some mead and drank mead all weekend.
You're joking. That's actually how it happened?
Got drunk on mead and wrote out the Dova language and gave it to Jeremy Soule. He wrote out the poem.
I literally cannot believe that's actually how it happened.
True story told from a Todd Howard interview.
That writer must feel so honored.
What was the second track that we wanted to talk about?
I was really, really excited to talk about Masser. I found it in the middle of the commercial soundtrack, and it's one of those pieces that has like an ambient feeling. At first, it didn't really strike my attention, and the second I gave it a second look, I was like, what on earth is happening here? There's so much complexity.
This always plays at nighttime, which makes sense. You know, this piece is named after the larger of the two moons of the planet of Nirn.
Whoa! I didn't
Masser and Secunda, the two moons of the world of Tamriel.
That's tasteful.
Well, I mean, it's all in reference to when Lorcan, the forgotten god, was split into two halves, forming Masser and Secunda in the First Age. And it always, to me, felt like a track that really makes sense to be played at nighttime.
The harmonies are so distantly related. What I mean by that is each chord that follows the next chord, instead of following the next chord with a chord that is harmonically related to the one that was previous to it, it is as far away in the overtone series, in the harmonic structure, as it possibly can be. He purposely keeps the pattern as vague as he possibly can to keep you on your toes, makes you uneasy when you're traveling around at night, and it keeps his ideas fresh and listenable more than once. Here's the A section, right? He starts you off with a melody of just descending half steps. Do, 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 do. It couldn't be a simpler melody. It's not particularly beautiful, but when it's that slow, who cares, right? And basically, it's a simple melody with wacky chords underneath. If I read them to you now, to anyone who cares: E major 7, nothing crazy, immediately D minor, weird unrelated chord choice. Now F sharp minor, even more unrelated. A flat major, E minor, D augmented, like there is no pattern. But it doesn't end at the A section either. If the harmonic structure wasn't so complicated, then it wouldn't have that rich beauty. And if it didn't have the rich beauty, that descending melody that I just sang for you would get so boring so fast. Again, bang for our buck.
Here you've got this beautiful baritone voice that comes in through much of this song, and he's singing in presumably some language of the world of Tamriel. Maybe it's just vowels, maybe it's fake Latin, maybe it's lorem ipsum, but I think that the quality of having this solo baritone is an intentional choice that makes the piece feel somewhat sacred or ancient.
Super apt. I didn't think about that at all, but it does lend a sacred tone to it, doesn't it? If Jeremy Soule wasn't going for sacred tone, he would have added some vibrato in there, maybe like a bel canto tone. It's such a pure, no vibrato, pure clean vowel tone for that baritone soloist, to the point where we're wondering if he's real. There's one more thing I really wanted to talk about in Masser, because it's something we talked about earlier, which is Jeremy Soule's limitations with the implementation in the score means that because he doesn't have so many layering options, right? We were talking about how he needs to recompose the same melody over and over if he wants the audience to hear it in a different way. This piece is such a perfect example of that, because he brings back the A section with that descending line, but he needs to reorchestrate the whole thing. It captures both the moods, but the point is that poor Jeremy Soule had to go back in the studio and reorchestrate that whole A section.
Far Horizons. This is, of course, the track that's known by, I think most iconically, the distant horn intro. It's such a great little melody. It's repeated throughout the piece, and I want to start us off by talking again about the orchestration. Not just the fact that these are horns, but actually the quality of the horns too. These horns sound like they're really far away on the horizon.
Oh.
So to me, this is adding to that theme we've been talking about in Skyrim of semi-diegetic or quasi-diegetic music that bleeds over between reality and the game world.
Those horns didn't even cross my mind, but you're right. It sounds like they're like 100 yards away.
It sounds like some horns that you could be hearing way out there on the field of adventure.
Jeremy Soule wants you to pay so hard attention to the mood he's setting in this piece. What does he give you but an extremely organized melody?
He, throughout the piece, hands off the melody from the different sections of the string. It's repeated in different ways, in higher voices and lower voices.
Right, and there are moments where he hints at starting the melody again, but then doesn't, or hints at the middle of the melody, then takes it away.
And then there's one moment about 2/3 of the way through the piece. Everything comes together in this grand statement.
Those big grand moments, they're in Skyrim, but they're far between, aren't they? He makes you wait a long time for each one. Such a delicate balance that he has to make, because if he loads the score with organized melodies, with catchy tunes like this one, then they don't stand out. And those moments where you're going from town to town and you're waiting forever with ambient music, and then finally grand triumph comes in, the gravity is taken away if it's overused.
Some of the unique magic here with video games is, of course, the composer doesn't have direct control over what the player is going to be seeing on their screen when the music is playing. He sets us up for this grand moment of beauty when we're really just like walking down a forest road.
Allow me to muse, because I feel like almost a little bit of that would be taken away with a more sophisticated implementation. It's not you choosing where you're going to hear the music. The game takes more of the responsibility out of your hand, which is great. I love modern game implementation, but limitation has its charms, right?
Skyrim and any Bethesda RPG takes a little bit of buy-in.
You have to want it, right?
Yes, you have to want it. And even with the music implementation, that shines through.
The next piece I really wanted to talk about is Dawn. It's not as fluid and crazy as some of the other ones in the soundtrack, but it has a fun pattern, and that's really what I love about it. The whole piece is an exploration of the key of G, and like all of the other ones, he's getting the most bang for his buck he possibly can for the key of G. He starts you in G minor, he takes you to G harmonic major, which is not super common, but it's super beautiful. And it's a fun in-between minor and major that he transitions you finally into G major. It's G minor, G minor major-ish, which we're gonna call harmonic major. And then he finishes you in G major. What you're getting is an exploration of the key of G.
It's like walking around to different corners of the room, and there's a feeling of warming to me. Not warmth, but warming.
He demonstrates that with the stacking of the melodies in the beginning. Do, do, do. And then he gives you, after you get used to it, do, do, do. and those melodies stack on top of each other, but only when he stacks the third melody on top is when you know the A section's ending. This takes us into harmonic major, just enough for you to kind of get used to the idea of we have a raised third and a lowered sixth. We're in major and we're in minor, and then finally G major to take you home.
What's the overall purpose of all of that function?
The purpose is the bang for his buck.
Now by that, are you just saying he's trying to fill time?
Pretty much. He's not trying to make you uneasy like Master, so he doesn't need to use the harmonic complexity to shift your focus. He needs to use the harmonic complexity to keep things fresh.
I'm glad that you compared this to Master, because there is a different tone. This piece isn't quite so mysterious or dark or have those undercurrents of danger that Master did.
No.
Why?
Master is changing keys, changing tonalities. I wouldn't even say keys. It's changing tonalities every second. This piece stays in G the whole time.
Oh, that's really fascinating. So because we're more in a centered key center throughout the piece, a more consistent key center, it's more comfortable.
And the development from stacking minor melodies to developing into something more major, darkness to light, and then finally finishing in major, finally completing the darkness to light transition, is the sun coming up.
Oh, I love that.
These guys know what they're doing, and Jeremy Soule, he avails himself of his expertise in music theory to take us on a journey that will win him awards.
We might have to revisit Skyrim someday.
We only scraped the surface. There are other huge ideas that he communicated to us that we would love to explore. Today, we kind of went over how he takes advantage and uses the responsibility given to him by the limitations of the implementation.
And we also talked about the quasi-diegeticness of the role of music in this game. That is the way that there is a bleeding between the reality of the player and the reality of the game world.
But what also kept coming up was how Jeremy Soule gets the most juice from the fruit, the most bang for his buck with every minute of music, with every moment, with every rhythmic and melodic idea. He recycles it in a way that keeps it fresh to where he doesn't need to keep coming up with new ideas. This is for his benefit and for ours, because we want something recognizable to latch onto.
One of the coolest ways that Jeremy Soule reuses melodies intentionally is in the Age of Aggression or the Age of Oppression, depending on if you're Imperial or a rebel city. The melody is literally the Skyrim main theme.
He needs to reuse ideas to lengthen the music and to inspire us, the player, to keep listening.
It also builds out the fiction of the world. That's what we all love about Skyrim. We all love the feeling of being there in that world. This has been the Audiophiles Podcast.
We are a network of musicians, developers, gamers dedicated to the advancement of art and video games.
I've been Nox.
And I've been Malik.
We love the art of sound.
And if you made it this far, that probably means you do too.
Thanks for being a part of this.
Till next time,
play
with sound.